Hello everyone, how are you all doing? In this episode we add the GameOver scene and we add a replay function to it. This way the game makes a complete loop for the player, which is great. We also take care of a long ignored smaller issue with the projectiles. And as usual, before we start, hit that like button and also subscribe. You don't want to miss the next episode. And that's enough for this intro, let's begin the episode. One thing that we're going to address is actually in our projectile manager. And in the update method, where we loop through the projectiles, if it's active, we move it. Is it hitting an enemy? Then we set it to false. And depending on what type of projectile, we do something like an explosion or freeze or whatever. But if we do not hit an enemy, say that the arrow is traveling past an enemy, it just missed it, then it's going outside the bounds of the playing field and into the abyss, into the oblivion. Just keeps going. But the projectile will always be active because the only way to deactivate a projectile is to hitting an enemy. But he's not going to hit an enemy, he's just going to go. So we will need a method here that checks whether or not the projectile is outside the playing field. And if it is, then we set it to inactive. Because if we continue playing, more and more projectiles are going to miss an enemy and travel into the oblivion. So that would just make this list larger and larger and moving in a projectile that is completely useless to us. So we need this method or this check. And I think the best way to do this is that when we check if it hits the enemy, we have this bracket here or this code bracket inside here. If it's not hitting an enemy, then we simply check else if is projectile outside bounds. And we pass in the p. If it is, then p.set active false. And now we just need this method. And let's cut that and put it next to hitting an enemy. And place it right here. So first we check if p.getPos.x is less than 0. We're actually going to do this inverted, otherwise we're going to have a lot of return true. So we're going to keep checking until we find a false statement. So first we're going to check, is it more than 0? X is more than 0. Then we keep testing. If p.getPos.x is less than, and now we need the width of the game. And where do we have that set? I think it's in our main. Let's go to game screen maybe. Yep, 640. So let's go here and check whether or not projectile.getPosition.x is less than 640, meaning it's still within the bounds for x. Then we check if p.getPos.y is more than 0, or rather more or equal to 0, and let's add equal as well to all the others, like so. Because they're allowed to be 0, they're allowed to be 640, etc. And if that's the case, then we check the last, which will be p.getPos.y is less than or equal to 800, I think it was. Yeah, height is 800. And if all of that is true, then we return false, otherwise return true. So this will make sure that the projectile goes inactive if it's outside the bounds. So let's try it and see what happens. Yeah, looks like it's where, oh, there goes one. And that one was set to false because it went outside the game's width. And the game is working normally. Perfect. One thing that we need to add to our tower defense game is lives. And every time an enemy passes the finish line and was never killed by the player, a life is lost. And that's why we have this line of code. And we're gonna remove this and replace it with a reduction in lives. But first we're going to add lives into the game. So we go to our action bar where we have our gold, and right underneath here we add a private int lives. And let's start with 25, for example. We will change this later. And we also need a getter, so let's just add that right away. Public int get lives, return lives. And we will also need a method, public void remove one life. So whenever an enemy passes the finish line, we call this function and lives minus minus, and we now have one less life. We also need to add a check here, lives is less than or equal to 0. Then we want to say system.out.println game over. And this game over will be replaced a little bit later, but right now we just want to say game over, and we will deal with adding the functionality behind game over a bit later. Now we can go to our enemy manager, and in here where we say a life is lost, we remove that, and we call play.remove one life, and we create that method. We can keep it here. Action bar dot remove one life. So in our enemy manager, whenever a enemy is at the end finish line, we kill the enemy and also remove one life. Great. But we will also need to actually display the current amount of lives that we have. So to our draw method, below our game pause text, say lives, but let's actually take a look at where we do want the text. So let's just place a tower there for now. So yeah, let's just keep lives underneath our gold text here. So the same X, but a little bit further down. I think that's gonna be good. So lives, we start by setting the color. Color.black, so we don't get any weird flickering. And then we want to see gold amount, where we have it 110, 725. So g.drawString lives and plus lives. And for position, 110 was correct, but 50. Let's try 750 instead of 725. Let's see how that looks. That looks perfect. Let's see what happens whenever the enemies reach the end, if we lose any lives at all. So the enemies are disappearing into the finish line, and we do lose lives. So the reduction in lives work. Now we just need to add some sort of game over screen and allow the player to choose to replay, go back to the menu, or quit the game completely. So let's add a game over screen. There's a few ways we can do this, and one of them would be to keep everything inside our playing class. So in our update here, where we have game paused, and we also check if the game is not over, and if the game is over, then we would go into a different bracket and have different functions here. That would also make it harder for us to read the code, kind of like messy code, lack of better words. So I think the best way is to add another scene. So in our scene package, new class, game over. Yeah, just game over. And let's see what we need to extend in implements. Let's just copy that and paste it here. Now we get an error, add constructor and add unimplemented method. All right. So we need all of them, pretty much, or rather a few at least. And in this class, what will we need? We will need a game over text. I'm going to use render as our to-do list, kind of. And we also need buttons. We need a button for exit, for replay, and menu, perhaps. Actually, let's remove exit and just keep replay and menu, and then from menu you can exit. So let's start by adding the buttons first. So up here we have private, my button, not but, my button, button replay, button menu. And in our game over constructor we have a init buttons, like we have in other scenes. Let's create the buttons similar to how they look in our menu. So we can actually copy this, so copy that, paste that there. So the first button is menu, so menu equals new my button. Menu X will be X, Y, width and height. And B replay equals new my button. Replay. And we can actually copy this. Like so. And in our render we can remove that, but we say B menu dot draw and B replay dot draw. And before we get into the mouse events here, we go to our game states class. We haven't been in here for a while, and add a new one called GameOver. And we save it. And in our render, we start here. Case GameOver game.get. We need to create that one first. So let's go to our game class. We haven't been in here for a while as well. So class says private GameOver. To import that class. GameOver equals new GameOver this. And we will probably need a getter, so we might as well just add one. Public GameOver get GameOver. Return GameOver. And I think we're done in the game, and in our render we're not, so game.get GameOver render. And break. And I think we're done for now in our render class as well as our game states. Now we need to make sure that these could work. So over to our inputs class, or package actually. And we're not going to use the keyboard, just the mouse listener. And we don't need to worry about dragged. We do need to care about mouse moved. So case GameOver game.get GameOver mouse moved. E.getX, E.getY. Like so. And we're gonna copy this one. But we need a break before that. Now we can copy this one. Mouse clicked, yes, we need one. We need to copy this one again. For mouse pressed, yes. And mouse pressed. Mouse released, yes, we need one too. Then we just mouse released, like so. So mouse enter and mouse exit. Nope, we don't need that. Now I think we can start working in our GameOver class. So for mouse clicked, we're gonna skip, but mouse moved we can start with. B menu dot set mouseover false. B replay dot set mouseover false. If B menu dot get bounds contains, then B menu dot set mouseover true. Else if B replay dot bounds contains XY, then B replay dot set mouseover true. And we're gonna copy this part right here. Mouse pressed, we say set mouse press true, but it should be true and not false, like so. And for mouse released, we simply say B menu dot set reset booleans. That's the one. B replay reset booleans. Not for mouse drag, we won't use that one. So we actually need to go back to our game states, and instead of saying menu as the start one, we say game over is the start one, and let's see how it looks. So we got menu and then we got replay. Perfect. So we got the buttons working, but nothing happens, of course. We're gonna add the functions to the button soon, but let's just add the text up here, game over first. So we can actually buttons, and then game over text will be g.set color, color.red, and then g.draw string game over. And x will be 200 and maybe 50 for y. Let's see how that looks. That's a very, very tiny text, so we're gonna increase that. We need a larger font, and we have that in our action bar somewhere, I think. Yes, here we have a font, so we can just copy this. Go to our game over. Before we set the color red, we set the font, but we make it 30, so it's large. Let's see how that looks. Alright, it's larger, but also the buttons have gotten larger, but we don't want that. Let's increase the size of game over even more, but let's keep those at a smaller font. So let's try 50. Copy this. And for our buttons, we say 20. I think 15 was the default, but let's try 20. A little bit larger, but not too large. Alright, that looks better. So the game over size is good, but we should move it down and a little bit to the left so it's more in the center. And I think we can move the buttons down quite a bit. So let's do that first. And I think this looks pretty good, actually. So we move the buttons to start from 300, and the game over text is 160 and 80, and the different font sizes you have right there. So now we need to make sure that these actually work. And we're going to start with the menu, and that will be a simple one. All we do is change the state to menu. And in our mouseClicked, we can take this and paste it. But instead of that, we say set game state, and we pass in menu. And we need to close that. And of course we need to import it. And that's import static main dot game states dot star, right? Then we get the method and the variable. Perfect. So let's try and see what we get when we click it. Boom, menu, perfect. Now we need to fix the replay. And this one will be a little bit more tricky, but we're gonna take it step by step. First, we're gonna need a method, and we're gonna call that replay game. We create the method, and we're not gonna keep it right there. We're gonna keep it above the mouseClicked. And this method will do a few things. It will reset everything. It will also change state to playing. So first we're gonna need to reset everything. And I think the best way to do it is to actually call the playing class, and in playing we reset everything. So we need to access the playing, but we don't have it directly, so we go game.getPlaying.reset everything, like so. And we create that method, create the method. We can keep it at the bottom, doesn't really matter too much. And in here we need to do a few things. We need to call action bar dot reset everything. So we can create that method. We're not gonna go in here just yet. Then we need to go up to the top here, and we need to call all the managers, all the Karens, and tell them to reset everything. So we can actually copy this so we know what managers we need to call, so we don't forget anyone. And managers, like so. But Let's just do it like so. And for our enemy manager, let's take a look here. We have a list of enemies. They need to be reset. Do we need to reset anything else? No, I don't think so. So we're gonna clear the enemies list. So at the bottom here, public void reset. And this one, just enemies.clear. And since we are just resetting, we don't need to reload any images. They are already here, so that's okay. I think that one is good. So enemy manager.reset. And in our tower manager, we have the towers and we also have the tower amount. So those two need to be reset. Public void reset. Towers.clear and tower amount equals 0. Yeah, I think that's good enough. So we can call that one too. Reset. And our projectile manager, we have a little bit more. We have a projectiles list and also an explosion list. We need to reset projectile ID. Is there anything else? This is for images, so no. It's 2 lists and 1 integer. All right. So public void reset projectiles dot clear explosions.clear and projectile ID equals 0. Right? Yeah. All right. So we can call the projectile manager 2. And let's take a look at our wave manager. And in here we have a list of waves. So we need to clear that one. But we need to remember that when we create the manager, we actually create the waves and add the waves to the list. So let's clear it and call this function again, create waves. And then we have indexes that needs to be reset to 0. And I think these 2 booleans need to be set to false. And that's going to be all. So let's go down here. Public void reset. So we have waves dot clear. And as soon as we clear the waves, we create the waves again, just to make sure that there is no funny business going on. And then we had 2 indexes. We had enemy index equals 0. And then we had wave index equals 0. And we had 2 booleans, right? Yeah, let's just copy those 2. So wave start timer equals false. Wave tick timer over equals false. And I think that is all. Let's see if we didn't forget anything. Booleans, that's all right. We also have 2 ticks here that we need to care about. So wave tick should be set to 0. And enemy spawn tick should be set to that one. So enemy spawn tick equals enemy spawn tick limit. So we get the start values. And I think that is all. Yeah, that's all for wave manager. So to our playing, we can now call our wave manager and say reset. So all of these managers have been properly reset. I hope we'll see later. But let's just take a look in our tile manager. No, we don't even have to worry about anything in here. Nope. Now let's go to our action bar and remove the basic text. You know what? Let's just move this at the top so we can actually see it easily, so we don't have to scroll. So what do we need to set in here? Well, we can start from the bottom and we can say lives equals 25. Tower cost type should be equals 0. Show tower cost should be false. Gold should be 100. My button tower, selected tower and display tower should be null. So selected tower equals null and display tower equals null. Yeah, I think that is all for this one. So back to our playing. And now we just need to check what we need to reset up here. Action bar, no, that's already been done. Mouse X, mouse Y, sure, why not? So mouse X equals 0 and mouse Y equals 0. Enemy manager, no. Tower, no. Pro, no. Path point, no, we do not. Selected tower, we're gonna set to null. Equals null. Goal tick and game paused. So goal tick equals 0, game paused equals false. So we unpaused the game. I think this is everything. And let's go back to our game over, where we say reset everything, and then we say set game state playing. But we could have a lot of errors if we do not reset everything, even when we go to the menu, because we could go from game over to menu and to play, and then nothing has been reset, and we could have a lot of errors and problems. So we need to reset everything when we click the menu button. So let's just move that in here, and let's move this up like so. And you know what? Private void reset all. And just move this one in here. And that's called reset all. And in case we need to change anything for this, we can just do it here and not on two places. And then we call reset all inside this bracket right there. And now we can actually give it a try. So first we need to go to our game states and change start from game over to menu. And in our action bar, we can scroll to the top and set lives at 1 so that we don't have to wait for 25 enemies to go through the finish line. Now we just need 1 and then it's game over. So let's give it a try and see what we get. All right, moment of truth. And nothing happens. Why not? Well, obviously we need to add something here, not just say game over. So let's add set game state game over. So up here we remove this one and say game state dot start, so we get everything. And now it recognized, so now we can try it. And moment of truth. All right. So it looks like we have a perfect loop of the game. We can play it, we can have game over, and we can come back over and over again. Beautiful. And that, my folks, will be game over for this episode. Adding the game over scene to the game makes the game replayable without having to restart the game from start. I hope that you found it useful, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe. The next episode will be a good one. But until then, take care, and I hope to see you in the next update. Bye.